Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. And I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. We've got an interesting show today, and I say interesting from a couple of perspectives. One is my guest is geographically very close to my heart. I mean, he kind of grew up very close to where I'm living right now, and I just discovered that. He's currently living in Sydney, Australia. But also because of the work that he's been doing, the whole idea of digital technology and what is on the horizon, kind of how do we actually get our arms around some of the stuff that's coming, and it's coming really fast in some very interesting ways. Kevin Shimoda, just to kind of give you a little bit of background here, he is one of the world's leading experts on digital technology. As a matter of fact, he was the global head of marketing and partnership for WeChat. And right. If you're familiar with digital technology in any way, shape, or form, you have run into WeChat, which is a division of the Tencent organization, one of the largest digital organizations on the planet today. He just recently was with Accenture as a director of platform strategy with them. And that's not saying just a minimal sort of thing. That's a big deal. Platform strategies for one of the largest consultancies in the world. So Kevin, I just want to welcome you to the show, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I truly am.
Thanks so much for having me, Blaine. Excited to be on here. And like you said, it is impressive just chatting just now and figuring out how much geographical footprint we share. You're an adjunct professor at Beijing University. I went to Beijing University for a year. I'm from Bellingham near Seattle, and you are living in in the San Juan Islands, and I was married on one of the San Juan Islands. You lived in Australia. I'm living in Australia right now, so we share a lot of commonalities. Excited to have the conversation.
It's crazy how the lines of connection actually reveal themselves when we start really paying attention. And that's something that I do want to talk about a little bit here, because in this may seem tangential, but it opens up a door for some things here. And then I do have a question for you, but the idea that we're different is one of the biggest problems on the planet today. And we tend to sort for differences rather than sorting for similarities. And when we're sorting for differences, it almost always leads to the experience of disconnection, separation. You're different from me. I sort for similarities, and all of a sudden I find something that's kind of like, really, you lived there too? Oh my God!
Right.
And all of a sudden we now have a platform where we can actually have a very different kind of conversation than what we would have had that similarity not been brought to the forefront. So
absolutely,
digital, that whole digital space, it can lend itself to one of those or the other, separation or connection. And WeChat, the whole name itself, WeChat, implied connection, but there's also this nefarious sort of separation, social separation that occurs in a lot of the digital spaces today. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I also want to make sure we transition as quickly as we can to a new book that you got, because I'm fascinated by the title of that book as well. So we'll just start with The Digital Divide.
So let me make sure. What rephrase your question again? I want to make sure. I heard nefarious, and I was like, God, what a beautiful word. And I know that it means like it can be a little bit evil sounding. But what are you trying to ask here?
The illusion of social connection through the use of digital technology actually lends itself, if we're not paying attention, to digital disconnection.
Yes.
I actually become more separate and less social.
I love
being social.
I love that question. Okay, I'm glad I had you rephrase it, because I didn't fully understand your question, and I think that's a beautiful question. And I mean, you actually have a little bit of an assumption that like the illusion of social connection is something I accept as a fact. But I do really agree with you. I think that yes, it is. It's an interesting and a good point that in a way technology is bringing us all together. It's technology is bringing us all together in a way like never before, and we are now on Facebook. I'm 33. I was born in '88, and so I got Facebook when I was in college. And then what's interesting is that friends that I had before Facebook, I don't know how to connect with a lot of them. Or I don't know how to find them. I have a friend from 8 years old that was my best friend for 3 years, and I don't know how to find that person. Like I think I kind of don't remember the name. But then after Facebook, every one of those friends are going to stay with you for the rest of your life. You just can't lose that connection because of Facebook, which is kind of like, in my mind, I know a lot of people in the West are getting sick of Facebook. They're like, oh, it's bugging me all the time. It's so much information, it's so much misinformation, it's so much blah blah, it's so many ads. But for me, I just use it. I use it rarely. I use it to connect with people. And it's like the yellow pages of our modern era. It's how you find and call people.
Yeah.
So a lot of connection, but like you said, and I really do agree with it, is that you can lose a lot of deeper connection because you have a lot of surface connection. I'm just like random kind of example. Dungeons and Dragons, this like role-playing game, is kind of been having a return. And I've been playing it online. I play it, and I've been playing it online because of COVID. And we're all playing it online, but it starts feeling like business meetings. There's like lower bandwidth. People aren't paying attention. You just lose so much that you have in an in-person interaction. And it's so much slower. And I just got sick of it, and I just kind of quit after a while. And I thought I didn't like the game anymore. And then I realized I just don't like playing it online because it is so low bandwidth. It's so low connection. And when you're in person, you can read all these body gestures. It's real time. Everyone's paying attention. No one's looking at another screen, because when you're online, you can be looking at another screen. You can be taking things out of context. You don't have your full attention there, etc. And I think that's a little bit of a metaphor for just social connections in general on social media. I think, a lot of people, it's harder for them to connect deeper. They don't connect deeper because a lot of times when you're engaging people, they're looking at their smartphone and they're not really, it's hard for them to engage with you wholly.
Yeah, the head is down, not up. And also the use of avatars and the use of a persona. I've got a social persona. And who's really behind the veil?
That is funny. I know in China. So Blaine, you've been in China for a bit, and Facebook, I think did kind of a good thing in that they really try to stress in their product real names, real faces. So when you're on Facebook, I search Blaine Bartlett. Maybe I'll find you, maybe I won't, because like Facebook kind of, you have to kind of be friends with a friend or something. But I'll have a chance of finding you. I'll have a chance of finding people, and I'll see probably your face. It's real names, real faces, and you don't have to do your face as your profile picture, but a lot of people do because Facebook has tried to create a culture where that's a thing. They've kind of tried to make that their standard. Whereas when you're in China, you use WeChat. A lot of people, it's fake name and a flower. You'll be talking to a flower for 30 minutes. And people that I haven't met in real life, I've just got connected. I get introduced to them. Or you'll be doing some service that you can do over WeChat, and then the person's like selling you, I don't know, like they could even be selling you a house. There's so much commerce that happens over WeChat. You kind of want to go, can we do a quick video call? I need to make sure you're a person. Yeah, you are you, because right now I'm talking to a flower. And it can feel very unreal.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, the idea, the title of this podcast is The Soul of Business.
Right.
And Tencent is one of the largest companies in the world. WeChat certainly is bumping 1 billion users.
Yeah. Oh, past. Yeah, past now.
Yeah, past that now. Yeah. So I mean, we're talking incredibly large enterprises. When you hear the soul of business in the context of some of the firms that you worked with, what comes to mind for you?
You know, it's funny. The first thing that came to my mind when I see that word is capitalism, which is, you know, you in an MBA, I've done I've gone to business school, and you essentially you learn the definition of a company or a business is a revenue generating enterprise. And it is funny to hear. I'm from Seattle or Bellingham, and we're like a lot of libertarians, very left wing, very liberal, and people are like, good business saves the world, and good business does all these things. And when you actually look at the definition of a business, it says it's an enterprise which makes money. It's a revenue generating thing.
Mhm.
But when you hear soul, I always I'm a little less religious, and I think of soul as like soul food, like black food in Louisiana, and then I think of jazz, and I think of the soul of business. I think my second thought is a little more romantic, and actually I think this more romantic aspect is what brings me back to kind of what WeChat and Tencent do, because WeChat and Tencent, in a lot of Silicon Valley tech companies, for a long time, they don't go, how do we make money? They go, how do we get users? Because once we have users, we can get money. But let's not make money the main metric. Let's make the main metric users. And that's what WeChat and Tencent do. And what WeChat does that is just has always kind of been a little step above Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley goes, how do we get users? Because we're going to shove ads on down their throats. What WeChat does is they don't just go, how do we get users? They go, how do we bring value to users? And that's kind of this next level of just, I'm not just trying to get you in the door. I'm trying to just give you value. You walk in the door freely. I'm trying to give you value so that you get something. And then you go to your friends, hey, look what I got. This is really nice. Or you want to stay. But even more importantly, number 3, you trust WeChat. You trust the product. And that is so key and critical that I think is very not understood in the West, that cultivation of trust.
Yeah, boy, I could not agree with you more on that, Kevin. I mean, Facebook is running into some, Meta is running into some difficulty around that right now, and yeah, Google to a degree is. I mean, there's a number of different platforms that trust. When trust is broken, everything's a relationship. Everything is predicated on relationship quality, and if the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. The foundation of every relationship is trust. That gets broken and the relationship starts to crumble. And you touched on something. I mean, Milton Friedman famously said that the purpose of business is to make money. I could not disagree more with Milton Friedman in that context. I think you make money, as you were pointing out, when you're delivering value. But if you set out to make money, you're going to you're going to shortcut. You're going to make decisions that are not in service of a greater well-being. And that also includes your organization and its stakeholders. So the idea of, and I loved how you put this, it's kind of like, look what I got. I feel good about it. I've still got the box that my first iPhone came in. iPhone 1, the first I got the box because I was blown away with the packaging.
That's worth something now, for sure.
Yeah,
I've seen those. I've seen iPhone 1s on eBay.
I've got it in the credenza behind me here.
Yeah, it's like $20,000 for like the iPhone 1 right now. So
yeah, well, I don't have the iPhone 1. I've just got the box.
But even the box, the people obsessed with the packaging of Apple. So definitely.
But I felt good about me. It was kind of like, gosh, I feel good about this purchase. I feel good about me for making this and that carried forward. I don't think it's an accident in any way, shape, or form that Apple is has $1 trillion valuation. That's not an accident. That's a consequence of paying attention. And this is something that Steve did very deliberately. End user experience.
Yes.
And he would have, make it, he basically said well, and this is a story that goes on and it's been recaptured a number of different times, but the Mac, when it was first designed, they all wrote their names on the inside of the box. these art, these engineers, this was a piece of art that they were proud of delivering. It wasn't
Wow.
a corner cutting exercise. It wasn't the cheap plastic because we're squeezing every bit that we can for margin here. It's kind of like we're delivering something out here that we want to be proud of. It will make a difference. People will feel good about it. They're going to the wow, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So you're addressing that, I think, in the question around what's the soul of the business. It gets back to, and you mentioned soul food, you mentioned jazz, that
Yeah.
aliveness. The
Yeah.
soul of business can absolutely bring alive the experience of being a consumer in a very positive way, as well as being a participant in the organization.
Mm.
So that's my soapbox spiel.
Uh, really good. Yeah. It's funny. I'm like, I couldn't agree with you more but actually you were kind of agreeing with me. So I'd be agreeing with myself. But yeah, I mean, when you go just even riffing off that a tiny bit with jazz, with soul food and soul in jazz and music and art, those things have on the surface and intrinsically no purpose. There's
Yeah.
no reason to have art. There's no reason to have music. Enjoyment, entertainment barely even has a reason. And so, yeah, a business has a purpose, which is money making, but there's just so many parts of it that aren't its quote unquote purpose, which are so important. I personally don't really want to do any more work that I don't believe is making the world a better place.
There you
Um,
go. Yep.
and like, yeah, like I
That's
said,
why I
I'm
wanted to have
like,
you on.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks. I'm jumping on Web3 products now, as I kind of told you in the beginning, and I am getting concerned about things like Bitcoin, and they do like it's at some point supposed to be 8-10% of the world's energy consumption.
Consumption, yeah, and the
It's
mining, yeah.
now the energy consumption of Argentina as a whole entire country. And that is really concerning to me. I'm from like I said, like the Seattle area. I'm obsessed with climate change, and that's always going on in my mind.
Yeah.
If I didn't get into business, I'd be like some hippie tying myself to trees. But I decided I wanted to do something a little more significant and have a little bit more sway, and hopefully keep a green enough heart that once I get into a position of power, I can make a change. And I'm jumping on a Web3 things like there's new blockchains like Hedera, which is similar to a
Yeah.
blockchain, but it's actually carbon negative.
Neutral.
So it has
Not even neutral.
it's a tiny impact, and then they buy carbon offsets. So they're
Yeah.
like, and then you compare that to the other things. So I'm just really excited. I actually only found out it was carbon negative like 2 days ago, but I knew I was already on the project, and I was like, how do you guys not lead with that point? They were like, oh, we're really fast. I was like, how do you not lead with being carbon negative? You're improving, you're bettering the world. That's so
Yeah,
massive.
just by existing, you're improving the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
That's right. We're going to take a real quick break here. When we come back, I want to just kind of follow on this thread a little bit. You've got a new book out, Superapp, and I think there's a link here to what we're just talking about. So we're going to take a real quick break, talking right now to Kevin Shimoda, and we will pick it up when we come back from this little hiatus. See you in a minute. I want to thank you for listening. I want to also invite you right now to go to blainebartlett.com. And on that site, which is my personal website, you'll see services up on the top menu. I'd like you to click on Leadership Mastermind. Now, why I want you to do that is we have structured a mastermind program that is very unusual and it is very powerful. And by going onto that site and clicking that link, you'll be taken to a landing page that is an invitation to join this mastermind. It's a 52-week-long exploration of what it takes to be a highly effective leader in today's fast-changing environment. You won't regret it. And if you've been liking what you've been listening to on these Soul of Business podcasts, how does one become a leader that can keep connection to the soul of business? That's what we look at. That's what we're about in this mastermind program. So again, go to blainebartlett.com and click on the services link, and there you'll find the link to the Leadership Mastermind program. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening to this little commercial, and now
Back to our show.
Welcome back, folks. And before the break, Kevin and I were talking about, and he had actually just begun to reference this Web3, and some of his concern around Bitcoin mining and some of the things that are going on with that whole space. You've got a new book out that I think is going to be interesting to discuss here. It's called The First Super App. And I'd like to have you just take a moment here and lay out the premise for the book, and then we can kind of do a little deeper dive into some of the implications of it, because I'm fascinated.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what we were talking about before, I mean, the solo business is a great question. Definitions are always fun, especially obscure kind of phrases and obscure definitions, because everyone can kind of go in their own direction. So I think that's a fun thing to start off with. And I was talking about how WeChat, Tencent, they take that. So first, business money making enterprise, Silicon Valley goes get the users, and then WeChat and Tencent goes get user value. And it's important. It's an important difference between get the users, because and this I'll kind of go into. This is, in my mind, a lot of the essence of a super app. And it's this essence of a super app, or I call it like tenets of a super app or a super app strategy, which is what I'm trying to explain and show in this book. And by the way, Gartner has just come out with a report, actually a report and an article. Actually, I think 3 reports pretty much. Gartner just came out with all this stuff on super apps because they think it's going to be really big, and it's not just hype. They think that there's a lot there. They think it's going to take 5 to 10 years for all of this to even reach its pinnacle of value. So it's pretty exciting times. It's Elon Musk made it really big by saying he wanted to turn Twitter into a super app. That's what made, if you've been seeing super app in the news, it's Elon Musk was telling everyone, I want to buy Twitter. I want to turn it into a WeChat style super app. That's what kind of made it really big. But the people that do a lot of business analysis like Gartner are going, this is something big for the long run. So back to that kind of little point is that, Tencent, WeChat, they want to make user value. And then one interesting part of this was that it was while I was at WeChat, so I was there for 4 years. We had around 800 million users, and they were using WeChat about 2 to 3 times as much on average, about 90 minutes on average, where the average for Facebook was about 30 minutes. And we were the envy of Silicon Valley. We were the envy of Apple and Facebook, a lot, maybe not Apple. Apple just does so well, but we are the envy of Facebook and Google and all these players. How do you get people to be on your app for so long? And what was interesting is that the founder of WeChat, he gives like one talk a year. Now he doesn't really give a talk anymore, but he would pretty much give one talk, 1 or every 2 years. But when he talks for about 5 to 9 hours straight. He just goes up on stage and he doesn't get off. It's pretty funny. And he said, he goes, this isn't a good thing. I see 90 minutes on my app as a problem. And he goes, WeChat is a tool and it should be used to accomplish things and create value. He goes, to kind of wrap your mind around this, think of the tool of a hammer. If you can hammer in a nail in 5 seconds, that's better than if you can hammer in a nail in 5 minutes. So he goes, it's bad that people are they're on this app for so long. Maybe they're not actually getting value. Maybe they're getting stuck. Maybe he goes, I want to increase the efficiency of value creation on my app. I don't want them to be on here for as long as possible. And so then that was when he created this thing called mini programs, which are kind of like apps within WeChat. He goes, because I want to allow businesses to make little serviceable apps or sell goods or do whatever thing on WeChat, and then make it so they can very quickly give whatever service to users. And then the users can get that service and then get out. And then there's like no notification follow-ups. No, like they can't follow you, they can't give you ads. You just do this, you get the service, you get out. And he goes, I want it to be like the original internet dream of going to a website, checking something out and then leaving, not having all these follow-on notifications. I'm going to send you emails, newsletters, etc. And so it was about reducing the amount of user time and increasing the amount of value. And that was a big difference from what Silicon Valley talks about.
Yeah, that's absolutely the reverse. I mean, design the app so it's sticky.
Yes,
the stickier the better.
Stickiness.
Yeah. And so the super app concept is quick in and out, high utility, but it's also a one-stop shop.
Yes. So the super app thing. So that mini program that he created, which was all about efficiency, that has kind of become the defining feature of super apps in the West. It's kind of like, but I see it as one part. I think the ethos, kind of like quick in and out, quick utility, one-stop shop for so many different things. That is kind of the fundamental aspect of a super app. You don't need to have mini programs. You don't need to have mini apps like an operating system on an operating system. That's a cool thing, but that's a high barrier to entry for companies to make apps on your app. That's a high barrier to entry. In fact, I don't think that's a good starting place. You should have a really easy thing that businesses can do that's not so complex, that doesn't require a developer. I mean, WeChat was already a behemoth when they released that. So what is a super app? A super app is, I like to call it, it's an app that everyone's using to do everything. And they're doing it efficiently and easily. And so my more complex definition is everyone's doing it. So users to do everything that's content that businesses, governments, whatever creates. And then they use tools to make their interactions efficient. And it uses a platform strategy to reach, like big quantity, to reach scale of these users and content. That's kind of my working definition.
Yeah. So when, and as you say, I mean, there's already examples. There are, prototypes out there that are beginning to gain traction. If there's no follow-on, if stickiness isn't the issue, or isn't the holy grail, where's, and this is the business question, where's the monetization?
Great question. Well, so you can have advertisements with a super app. So Tencent's business model is about 20% ads, 55% games, and then 25-30% other stuff. A lot of and then like in games, and the other stuff is like value added services. So what WeChat does is the advertisements that they have are very expensive for businesses because there's high interaction rate. They only allow 3 advertisements a day per user. So if you're a user, the max you're going to see is 3 on like the main place, which is the WeChat moments, kind of like the wall. You don't see any advertisements in chats, which is the main. The second main feature is like kind of like a Facebook wall. It's called moments. The max you'll see is 3. And then there's channels, which is kind of like TikTok. And you'll see some there as well, but really limited. But because WeChat does everything, because everyone has their credit card connected, they have shared their address. So their credit card connected, and they're using WeChat Pay all the time. They've shared their address. All their friends are on there. When you put an ad, you're Nike, you put an ad on there, you go and they put on the moments, check out these shoes. The click-through rate is about 100 times that of Facebook, because Facebook, you're just inundated with ads and you just learn to just ignore all of that. And then you can click on it and then you buy it in WeChat. You click on the ad, you go to the Nike mini program, you buy it in WeChat. Then you go, hey, I got these shoes, you forward to a friend, they buy it, and then they forward to a friend, they buy it. Then the company can see like first, second, third referrals, and they can follow up with advertisements to like similar users. So they still make money off of ads, but they try not to have that be their main revenue. And then Then Tencent makes money in a kind of a little more sneaky way in my mind, or a little more obscure way, which is they invest in companies that do well, that would do well or already do well on the WeChat platform, which is they have a big social aspect. And they invest in those companies, and then they help improve their WeChat experience. Then they elevate their exposure on WeChat, and then those companies explode. So you don't see that on the Tencent financial accounts so clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a part of the revenue. It's they put a 5% stake in this company. It was worth 5 million, and now it's worth 5 billion, and they've skyrocketed.
So Tencent actually becomes kind of an incubator.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Tencent investment is everyone. If you just stay behind, like Tencent investments returns are some like, I don't know how high they are, but they're probably like 40%, 50% a year. It's just crazy how much money they're making.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question, because I mean, Tencent is over 1 billion users. I mean, WeChat alone is over 1 billion users. Tencent is just enormous. How much does scale impact the viability of these super apps? Because I've been in China, I've used WeChat in China. I mean, I can shop. I mean, everything is right there. I don't have to leave WeChat to do anything.
Right.
It's all contained right there. And it really is elegant in that sense. No unintended consequences as far as an end user is concerned. It's just kind of seamless, frictionless. That's a function of scale.
Yeah, I think scale is a big part of it. I think for me, scale, I think WeChat could exist without the number of people in China, right?
Mm-hmm.
So scale of China, economy, and number of people is a big factor. This is actually something I talk in my book, but I talk about it in more that China has developed a splinter net and their own internet ecosystem and their own market. And the biggest, I go into 4 factors about that. But the biggest factor of which is scale. That is, basically, I make a kind of simple math thing where I call it the gross smartphone user market. Whereas it's like 60% of people, 70% of people in China have, I think it's 60% now, have smartphones. And then you just go, what's 60% of the economy? That's essentially the market size for smartphone users. It's smaller than the United States, which is around, I don't know, some 16 trillion or 13 trillion with that math. It's about 80% of people have smartphones, but it's around 11 trillion US dollars a year for, like, as a factor of GDP. But then it's bigger than the next 3 markets. So it's big enough to sustain a super app. So I think it would be, so that factor scale is really important. I think you need scale with the super app, because with a super app model, you got it to do everything. I mean, you need a lot of people to attract all of those companies.
Exactly.
And then you need a lot of places to play to make that kind of investment model sustainable and a feasible business model where you can invest in something and then you can make sure it's successful.
That is outstanding. Kevin, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this has been just, for me personally, an education. And it's been an enjoyable, pleasurable education. So I want to thank you for that. Where can people find out more about what you're up to, and where can they get a copy of your book? And folks, by the way, that's called The First Super App. That's Kevin's book. Yeah,
that's right. So you can look me up if you can figure out how to spell my last name. My last name is a bit difficult to spell. It's Kevin Shimota, Shimota. I have a website. You can go there. It talks about the book, talks about what I do. I actually have my own podcast, which is more on China, Asia tech. A little more of that focus. It's not as succinct as Blaine. We go for like an hour and a half. It's not for the faint of heart. We're not as well organized. But check out the book. I'd love to hear. And on my website, I have a contact me. I get like one person contacting me a month. So be brave. Feel free to contact me. And I'd love to. If you read my book, I'd love to hear about what you think of it.
Great. Folks have been listening to Kevin Shimota, and that's with a T, not a D. Shimota. Yeah, KevinShimota.com.
That's right.
Okay.
Or just look at the first
kevin.com.
super app. I should pop up.
Yeah, the first super app. That's the name of the book. I can't thank you enough again, Kevin. This has been great. I could continue this conversation forever. You know, you're fascinating, and what you're working with, I think, is just fascinating. It is the next evolutionary step, yeah, in this whole digital environment we find ourselves. So,
Totally.
folks, feel free to go to my website, blainebartlett.com. You'll find all kinds of little goodies there. Most of it's available for free. Most of my IP anymore is available for free. I do want to point you towards a couple of things. One would be a mastermind program that I run. This will be the third year. We're beginning a new cohort on that. And there's some information on the website about the Leadership Mindset Mastermind. So check it out. And until next time, you've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett, and I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. Go out, be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation, and life will work well for you. Take care.